marquee session for the day. Welcome back to Bangalore Business Fest 3.0. Biographies and Indian business history is the theme for the day. So this session is probably the yang session of the yin and yang session which I spoke about. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "Our hero is no braver than an ordinary man." A hero is no braver than an ordinary man, but probably 5 minutes longer. So we have 4 panelists over here today who have held on for that 5 minutes longer. At least 3 of them, I kind of have met them and interacted with them earlier. Captain Gopinath, in fact, when I was doing my second book, which was Open Source Leader, I would have spent at least about 3 or 4 days in your office in Cunningham Road, interviewing you and figuring out your life journey. And Rashmi Bansal, we moderated a panel together in IIT Roorkee probably 10 years back. It was on innovation. Alan Rosling, author of Boom Country. Rashmi Bansal, best-selling author and entrepreneur. Captain Gopinath, founder of Air Deccan. And our host for the session is Mr. Benedict Paramanand, founder and chief executive officer of Bangalore Business Fest. Mr. Paramanand is a founder and CEO of Bangalore Business Fest. He has a keen interest in sustainable sciences and studies. He is also currently the editor of Sustainability Next and Management Next. Mr. Paramanand is also the author of C K Prahalad, Mind of the Futurist, and co-author of Big Bets, Big Rewards. Over to you, sirs. Thank you very much.
Hello. Yeah, I think this is better.
This is called Jugaad.
Jugaad. So you can use it that side, Alan. This seems fine. Firstly, thank you to great panelists who are here. Each of them is an icon of this industry. Before coming here, I told myself that I want to be a good moderator. Who's a good moderator? Who speaks less, gets the panelists to speak more, and not learning from television moderators. Okay. So let me start with Alan here. Alan is a unique person, British national. He spent 35 years, he says, deep experience in Indian business. His first book was launched a few months back. And
available through there.
Yeah, it's available here. The interesting part of this book, if you see it, is a question mark in this book. The title is Boom Country, the New Wave of Indian Enterprise. So why is this question mark? What is the question lurking in your mind?
Well, first of all, it's a great privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Benedict. And what a panel to be on with the man who created flying in India, other than JRD, of course, but he created it for us democratically, and the lady who created business writing as an industry. So, why the question mark in Boom Country? I have read so many business books that tout or boost something, saying the next best thing, the next explosion, it's going to be China, the end of the West, whatever it is. And I didn't want to write a book like that. I'm a huge believer in India, a huge believer in the future of India, but you have to admit, and I'm sorry if I'm going to upset some of my friends here, that we in India have shot ourselves in the foot repeatedly in the last 70 years of independence. And you can no longer blame us Brits. We did whatever we did, but we can't possibly be responsible anymore. So, I've seen the early 80s, the Rajiv thing in the mid 80s, then the 90s reforms, again and again and again, shining India And somehow we always seem to pull ourselves down again. Particularly, and you have to be, as a business person, you have to benchmark, particularly against the competition. So in my lifetime of visiting India, and I visited China this year after I first came to India, China has done 5 times better than India in just GDP terms, per cap, 5 times. So I believe this time is different, but it's not written in stone. It is up to us. I believe that entrepreneurship is the key. But entrepreneurs also have a habit of doing crazy things and being unlucky and so on. So I believe that India is being transformed by entrepreneurship for the better, but it is not a God-given gift. It is up to us.
Okay, the next question is, he's interviewed 100 entrepreneurs, ranging from Mr. Ratan Tata to startup executives, startup entrepreneurs in Bangalore, which means you have interviewed 3 generations of entrepreneurs. What is the essence that you get, the Indian essence, by interviewing the 3 generations?
Well, Ratan I love, I worked with him for 12 years, but I wouldn't describe him as an entrepreneur. He's brilliant, but he's inherited, he's 3rd generation, 4th generation. So in my entrepreneurs, I didn't count the interview with Adi or Anand or Ratan. But there is, I think, a huge difference between the older entrepreneurs that I interviewed, so Uday Kotak, Sunil Mittal, Ronnie Screwwala, Kishore Biani, and the younger people. In the book, I just used, for the ease, a pivot around 2000. People before 2000, people after 2000. It is fundamentally different after 2000. Why? It's easier. Thank God it's easier to set up a business now than it used to be. We just had a session on failure. Failure is now more acceptable. There is more money. You can raise venture capital. If you've got a good team, a good idea, you're persistent and lucky, you can raise money in this country. Last year there was $15 billion of risk capital. That is a 50% reduction on the previous year. But even in today's tighter VC market, if you're smart, if you're determined, and you have a good team, you will raise money. That was not true before. And most importantly, the culture has changed in this country. And again, as a foreigner, even though I'm an OCI, I may cause offense to my Indian friends by saying the cultural change in India is, at least in part, what I think is the Americanization of the Indian mind. You are becoming much more American in your thinking, in a good way. I'm not talking about Trump or anything to the stupidity of America. I'm talking about go to America, as I did as a young man, and feel just the sense of opportunity. You can change the world. You will be more successful than your parents. That is not true of my country, where we were taught to get a professional job and play safe. India has become more like America in the sense that people believe that they can, and they want to, and that they will, and it will be better by doing so. And that, I think, is such a positive cultural change. And by the way, even your mother-in-law will now agree with you being an entrepreneur, which wasn't the case. So I toned down the bit in the book about my Indian mother-in-law, who fainted when she was told that her daughter was marrying a business person. So I was not an accountant, a lawyer, a civil servant, or a doctor. I was in business, and worst, I was then manufacturing bras and knickers. The fact that I made half the bras and knickers in the UK did not matter to her. The point was I was in business, and I should not tell the family that.
Yeah, those are great insights. Coming to Rashmi, on a lighter note, Rashmi, half the billionaires, new billionaires in India today have a surname called Bansal. Yeah? So, can you just speak something about it? What's the secret?
I was asked by Outlook magazine to write a column on this topic, which you can Google and read. So I've actually written about this subject in a more light-hearted vein. So traditionally, Bansals are the trading community, the Banyas as we call them, and actually they're a subset of something called Agarwal. So everybody a lot of the very big names in Indian business are Bansals or Bansal related, whether it's Mittal, Garg, Goyal, all these people like, yeah. So, I think this is, but the difference is, I think this is a new breed of people who have this maybe business flowing in their veins, but then they also have a modern education and outlook. And if you marry the two, then you get the magic, right? You have the acumen, but then you also employ the modern thinking, entrepreneurial thinking. You want to build a professional organization and not a family business. And many of these Bansals who've been super successful, it was once printed in the Economic Times that 85% of India's e-commerce is owned by Bansals. Wow. Flipkart, Lenskart, and few others like that. Yeah. So it's a kind of a happy coincidence, but I think that the truth is that, yes, maybe a little bit of genetics, but with a lot of, modern education exposure. Many of these people have gone to top institutes, got professional degrees, worked abroad, then come back with that thinking and set up a business, which is, great for us.
Okay, coming back to the writing, the serious business of today. Deliberately, I've kept this stack of books right in front of me. All these books are authored by Rashmi. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books here. And these are 7 books in the last 9 years, 9, 10 years. I think from 2011 or so, she's done 1 book a year. Yeah. What motivates you to be so prolific?
Well, firstly, I'm a professional author. This is my job. I mean, it's like asking, why do you go to office every day? So obviously, I meet so many interesting people, and I feel that their stories need to be told. And I don't go after giving the stories of the most successful people. Like, I don't go and check who are the top 500 companies, now let me just cover them. I mean, every book I write has a kind of a message. So the first book, Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, basically said that, look, MBAs can be entrepreneurs. That was the only message. In the past, before that book was written, believe me, the only thing for which IIM Ahmedabad graduates made it to the front page was when they got 1 crore salary at Goldman Sachs. And, at IMA, we knew that about 30% of our graduates are becoming entrepreneurs or self-employed people. So we thought, let's just tell, the young graduates of today that entrepreneurship is a viable career option. And let's tell it through stories of our own past alumni. Now, after that book was published, I started getting emails from a lot of people. For example, I read your book and I quit my job. That was the first email I got from this book. And then I realized, oh God, this is something, which maybe is a latent desire in many of us. But so far we've been reading stories either of Birlas, Tatas and Ambanis, or we've been reading about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. And neither of those really relates to you or me, who've grown up in a middle class family with, maybe your father is a bank manager or a railway employee, your mother is a school teacher, and you've been taught that you've got to have a certain path in life, and that's what you aspire for. So I think reading these stories about people like us, and that too the stories of 20 or 25 people in one book, was very inspiring for the reader, because then you felt, okay, if he or she's done it, I can do it too. There are people like me. So I think, I'm sorry, I lost the question.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
good. I can take off on another question.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason I write is because, just to conclude, it's like yesterday I was at a college which many of you in Bangalore may not have heard of. It's called Atria School of Technology. Has anyone heard of this college?
Yeah, it's right here close
It's
by.
right here.
Yeah.
But well, it's not one of the top institutes of Bangalore, but there was a boy who read my book and he emailed me and said, ma'am, can you visit my college and give a talk to the students? So I go to about 100 schools and colleges every year and just talk about this idea of entrepreneurship that, I think 10% of the students in every institution have that latent potential. And they just need a little, somebody to come and be the matchstick to light that fire up. So the reason I write these books is because I feel it makes a real impact on real people. And, there are enough stories which can be told. And therefore, I've written every book with a certain audience in mind. I wrote a book on women entrepreneurs, a book on entrepreneurs from smaller towns of India. And it's because there's a need. When you go to Belgaum, or you go to Rajkot, there they say, oh, but I'm not from a big city and I don't have the same opportunities. So there is a message, but I don't feel like you should be preachy in what you write. The whole format of these books, I think, is similar to Panchatantra tales, where we've grown up listening to stories and learning from stories. When I look at American authors, I mean, professors from Harvard Business School and so on, they have these books where at the end of every chapter, they'll summarize what you should learn from the book. And I think Indians don't like that because we don't like to be told, do this, do that. And the moment you leave it open, then the person can take a lesson that he or she needs from the book rather than being told that this is the lesson. And I just stumbled on this by accident and by intuition. I didn't know all this. Much later, I analyzed it with the MBA side of my brain. But when I was writing, I didn't know I was going to do it this way and it would achieve this result.
Yeah, so we credit at least to some extent the success of Indian entrepreneurship journey that's happening today to you. Connected question. There is I won't call it a shift from serious business book, your first book, and it's gradually each book of yours is going the social way, the social entrepreneurship. And your last book, which is God's Own Kitchen, the story of Akshaya Patra, is a story of happy marriage of philanthropy and business sense marrying philanthropy. So just take us through this journey of serious book writing to philanthropy and business.
See, I choose a subject based on the kind of connection I feel with it. Now, I could have written a whole series like, okay, I've written about I am entrepreneurs, let me write about IIT, let me write about, those things will sell. But you cannot, I think, as an author, take up subjects that sell. You have to take up the subject that speaks to you. And when you are deeply involved in the book, when you write it, then it conveys that emotion or that, the story to the reader. So I think, yes, I did write. The third book was about social entrepreneurs. And I feel that's a fascinating subject because apart from business success, what we see all around us are the problems which make us boom country with a question mark. And we need to solve these problems. And thinking like an entrepreneur is what's going to help us to, achieve that goal. And in fact, today when the government is talking about entrepreneurship, I went to NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation, to do a workshop on entrepreneurship for 50 plus managers because even they have been told now you have to start thinking of these words. When they probably joined PSU thinking this is the most comfortable job, no need to be hungry, foolish or anything for the rest of my life. So social entrepreneurship is, I think, something which touches everyone's life. And the specific story, God's Own Kitchen, it took me more than 2 years to actually do this book, 2.5 years, because writing a book about an organization is different from doing the other books where, I interview 20 or 25 people and then write each story like a mini biography. Because organization, each person remembers a different part of the story. It's like one elephant and, the different parts to it which each one remembers. And over 15 years, some of the facts have gone, confused. You have to check and recheck. And at the end of it, you have a huge, like maybe 6 or 7 kilograms worth of interviews, transcripts, and you have to then make a book which is readable. And I think it's like taking a stone and then trying to give a sculpture shape to it. I think in the last 2 years, 3 years, there's been a crazy boom in startups. Some of the boom which is happening is unsustainable. It's all about how many $1 million you're raising and then burning and raising the next 100 million. So at this point, I felt that, it would be better to tell the story of what makes a startup successful through a different kind of startup. And this is also a startup story because Akshaya Patra started by giving midday meal to 1,500 children. It was just khichdi prasadam from their own kitchen. And if today they are doing 16 lakh children in 11 states of India, how do you scale up from 1,500 to 16 lakhs? It can't be just through the goodness of your heart and compassion. So that's where the management story comes in, the innovation, the systems, the governance, all those things can be learned from this story. So again, it's a story you can enjoy as a story, but if you are running a company or you're a management student, you can get the lessons also. So it was something which attracted me, and then therefore I decided to tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah, coming to Captain. Captain is the only autobiographer in our midst. The first question I'd like to ask him is, how emotional was it writing your autobiography, Simply Fly, The Deccan Odyssey?
I think autobiographies are difficult in the sense that it's not possible to be entirely honest. I do not think any autobiography can bear all. I think probably in the whole of history, there are hardly any, except maybe one or two. Gandhi. But I think even Gandhi, in the second part, probably he would not have written some of the things he especially some of the sins that we commit. I don't think we have the courage to write all that. When I say sins in not only action but in thought. I was just reading, my friend Gopal Gandhi gave me a book which he edited, where I came across a letter there by Gandhi to Rajgopalachari. He said, I'm in love. This was when he was already 55.
Okay.
And I'm in love with this lady who was also a married lady, and she was in the ashram. And Rajgopalachari says, for heaven's sake, this letter burns. Don't take it back. I can't hold it. You're the Bapu, you're the father of the nation. What will happen to this country if they even think that you are thinking those thoughts, So what I'm trying to say is that in that sense, it's not a bare-all autobiography.
Just to interject there, this captures your first phase of your entrepreneurship, up to 2007 when A Deccan was sold. After that...
No, let me say a few more words.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. In the sense that it is largely an autobiography capturing the entrepreneurial aspect of life in the mold of, if you see, as you said, I don't think anybody in India has written business people autobiographies like Sam Walton wrote, Lee Iacocca wrote, or Richard Branson wrote, basically telling a story. It is not a how-to didactic book telling you at the end of each chapter, like she said, what are the things that makes you successful or how to build a brand, and it's not that. They basically told a story. So mine is in that same manner, but except that I'm not totally a 100% businessman because I have other interests in life, not just borderline interests. I came from a village. I went barefoot to a school. My father was a teacher in a very remote part of the Hassan district. I went to the army. I spent about 10 years in the army. I took part in the war and I was in the border areas. Then I wanted to be on my own. I resigned. Then I took to farming. And for 10 years I was into farming. And like all farmers, I got into debt and I got out of debt. I went through hell, and saw heaven in a sense. That's why I think probably it is said that the gates to heaven are through hell, probably. And I say heaven metaphorically. And after farming, that farming was also an entrepreneurial decision. And then I started the aviation business 20 years ago this month. First I started the helicopter company, then I started the airline, then I started a cargo company. There were huge successes, huge failures. But I also was very deeply engaged in politics. I was a member of a mainstream political party. For 5 years, I was the president of that party in that district where I was.
Aam Aadmi Party, that is.
No, that is. I was in BJP.
BJP, okay.
I was the president of BJP Hassan. I contested an election as a MLA. When BJP didn't exist here, I lost the election. Then I contested the election as an independent when I was deeply troubled by the caste politics and high command politics. I contested as an independent, not the last one, the previous one. When the parties offered me a ticket, because by which time I was very well known, they offered me a ticket, but I didn't want a ticket. Then I flirted briefly with Aam Aadmi Party because I took part in the Anna Hazare freedom movement here. So I got disillusioned with the Aam Aadmi Party.
So, Captain.
Yeah. So my book captures most of it except the last part because it was written before the Aam Aadmi Party.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'd like the audience to join in a big way. One question to Alan. Since you represent global. Yeah. Okay. About biography writing, global standards, Indian standards, global trends, Indian trends. Quickly, 1 minute. You have thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a historian by training, so I still, if I have, other than crime fiction and so on, what I read for pleasure is history. And I think, frankly, all business people should read history and biography because but business is not a science to me. Business is a series of judgments and so on. So learning from others, spotting patterns. Biography is a critical tool. And as human beings, we all communicate through narrative and stories. So biography, telling the stories of people, the stories of how people interact, the people who fall in love or don't. This is actually how we as human beings spot patterns and we remember things. So I struggle with academic style business books. I don't read them very often, frankly, because I think that we learn far more from the past and stories of the past and stories about people. And certainly great businessmen, when they're talking in their businesses, often tell stories in order to communicate, rather than present five forces or whatever. Just one very final point, if I can. Bansals. So my book was, I had a working title of The New Banyas, because I thought there was a new generation of drawn from all social castes and classes and castes, etc. And when I communicated to a number of entrepreneurs that I was writing a book on New Banyas and I wanted to talk to them, a number of them refused. For example, Kunal Bal said, I'm not going to talk to you because I'm not a Banya. But I'm going to introduce you to my co-founder who is a Bansal, of course.
Yeah. Captain, you have to add something? No. Quickly? Okay, we'll...
just the last thing, that the reason why I wrote that, I think that is one thing asked. The reason why I wrote the book was because I come from a rural background and I keep going back there. My heart is there. Physically I'm there. And I see the huge poverty and the lack of enterprise, if you wish to say that, in Karnataka. Of course, we have the new generation entrepreneurs. The one that comes to mind is from Karnataka, Narayan Murthy. But largely, Karnataka has not been a state very entrepreneurial.
Yeah, Captain, I'll have to stop there. Let's throw it out open to the audience. I'll take the liberty to ask Mr. Suresh Krishna, who's here with us. He was the chairman of the TVS Group. He is, sorry, sorry. Sorry, he is 80 and he's still here with us, celebrating literature, celebrating business. I'd like to ask him the first question to the audience. I mean, first question to you. Which is the most inspiring biography you read, sir?
To be very frank with you, I haven't read biographies. No, it's not because I don't like biographies or I don't like what they say or what is written, but I am a literature student and I read literary works, poetry, prose, and in various languages. I'm also a student of philosophy, so I read that kind of work. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not being apologetic for not reading biographies, but I think you got me at the wrong moment here.
No, I'll just, there are people who write biographies, people who read biographies, people who are biography material. He is one of them.
Well, Raghu has been a great friend of mine, and for a long time, and I'm going to stay with him tonight, so he has to say the right things. As they say in Sanskrit, Atiti Devo Bhava. So I'm being his guest, he can't say anything better. But it's nothing to do with biographies. I mean, we just published a book in Sundaram Fasteners called The Nuts and Bolts of Excellence. It is about the entire evolution of the company, not about me. It is about the evolution of the company from the start in 1966 to where it is today. And what are all the things that makes the company an excellent company. So it is, in a way, it is business history, but not a biography. But a business history is nothing but a coalition of what happens in the company, but also what happens to the entrepreneur who started it. So I'll leave it like that for the time being. I mean, it's not true that I have not read biographies. I think that is, but if you suddenly ask me like that.
You created such a big, successful conglomerate. So one doesn't need to read a biography to build a big business.
No. I don't agree with it. I do read biographies, but if you pounce a question on me like that, I have to rack my brain, and you couch the whole thing by saying he is 80 years old. So you have to give me a concession on that.
Okay, audience. Rashmi will start from the back. We'll come to you. Please go. Whoever has the mic.
I am Sachin. I am a CA student. I have a question for Rashmi ma'am. Ma'am, I'm a big fan of you, ma'am. I have read all the books you have written. Apart from the last book that you have written regarding the social entrepreneurship, that is God's Own Kitchen, means what's the driving force that lead you to do that, ma'am? Means there is a reason behind to do this, no, ma'am. I just wanted to know that. That's all.
Yeah. Would you like me to ask, or? The answering? Would you like me to ask, or would you like to answer? Okay, it's a very interesting discussion, and since we've all been so, even on the panel and from the response of the audience, so unabashedly casteist, which is really nice and honest and frank. So my question does relate to that, relating to the articles of that I've read, Mr. Alan Rosling, of not the book, and also what Ms. Bansal said about the Banyas. So now we are getting into Banya-ness, which is being accepted all over India. So do you think that is about risk-taking? That essentially it is about risk-taking, and if then, as a society, are we becoming more accepting of risk-takers? And is that sort of changing the mindset, which would therefore also affect reading behavior and what would be accepted by readers? It's a question for you. Thank you.
I have a question for Captain Gopinath. Captain, you spent 10 years in farming. That's very fascinating. And in fact, at one time I wanted to be a farmer, and then I gave up within 2 weeks. You've also been a successful businessman. In fact, I think many people here may not know that if today we are able to fly 2,000 rupees from Bombay to Bangalore, it's because of this gentleman. A big hand for him. I mean, is truly a pioneer. I mean, you've been a phenomenal success, and you've spawned so many other ventures. Came after you in civil aviation and elsewhere. What is it that business can learn from the farm world? And the farm world is very romantic, and business world is so mundane, boring, and profit chasing. I'm sure there's something that you find that we could all learn from. Thank you.
This is to Rashmi and Alan as well, and Captain Gopinath. We're talking about entrepreneurship, and I think the the theme is actually right. If we really need to sort of take India forward, but also how do sort of people who are working for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship organizations, there needs to be a change in how people also sort of work for them, because yes, you do have a breed of entrepreneurs, but then you do also, I mean, they do also need people, right? So how does that change happen?